Hello everyone. Today's topic is on the psychological aspect of pricing. So far, we have focused on the rational side of pricing, when consumers are calculated, when they act strategically. In this topic, we're going to look at the scenarios when they are not so rational, when psychological aspects are in play. On this slide, I'm going to show you a pair of price drops. So you're going to see the original price, and then you're going to see the discounted price. Without much thought, I want you to make a judgment on the fly and say it loud in front of the screen which price discount is higher, the one above or the one below. Do not spend more than 2 seconds. Here we go. I bet most of us would instinctively think the price drop on the bottom is a bigger discount. But then, now I give you time to do some calculations. You may realize that the first price discount is 14 cents. The second price discount is also 14 cents. So the amount of price drop are actually equal. If you consider the baseline price of 89 cents versus 93 cents, the first price drop actually is a deeper discount. But why do most of us think the second one is a bigger discount? The reason is, over years, we have all learned that when we look at prices, the digit on the left is 10 times as powerful as the digit on the right. That is, for 89 cents, this 8 represents an 80, this 9 only represents a 9. Therefore, this 8 is far more important. That's how we make quick price judgments. We look at higher digits, and then the first price discount looks like it was dropping from 80 some cents to 70 some cents. And the second one looks like it was dropping from 90 some cents to 70 some cents. In this case, our lifelong learning of how numbers work actually played against us. When we make a snap judgment, we are easily tricked to judge the price discounts wrongly. This is why you see so many prices end with 9s. That's because 9 is the largest number they can get without increasing the next higher digit. So next, I'm going to give you a pair of stores. For each store, there is a list of commonly shopped grocery products. Let's say you are going on a grocery shopping trip. Here are the items on your shopping list. So you want to choose between two stores, Clark's and Taylor's. And the next slide will show you a list of prices of the regular purchased items on your shopping trip. So based on this list, just as we do in our everyday shopping, if you don't use a calculator, can you judge which store offers a cheaper price just by looking at the list of the prices? Here's the list of the products at the two grocery stores. We have Clark's. Here are the prices of the items. And then we have Taylor's. Here are the prices of the items. Pause the video and make your decision in 30 seconds. Do not use a calculator. Without using a calculator, just looking at these prices, most of us would think Clark's is the cheaper grocery store and Taylor's is more expensive. Here is the comparison if you run the numbers in a spreadsheet. For these two grocery stores, the total of all the items on the list is actually identical at these two retailers. They are both $53.36. The difference is Clark's is cheaper on 20 out of the 30 items, and the Taylor's is cheaper on 10 out of the 30 items. So Clark's is more frequently cheaper, and the Taylor's is less frequently cheaper, but when it's cheaper, it has deeper price discounts. This is a very influential research on the retailing practice. That is, consumers far more often use the frequency of cheaper items as the cue for pricing perceptions instead of the depth of price discounts. So at this point, I want to give you a behavioral update on what we have seen so far. What we have examined so far is a so-called low involvement environment, or in other words, it's an environment where consumers usually don't spend much effort on, they don't spend a lot of time making decisions, they were in a way making fast decisions. So in these cases, consumers are often reliably error prone. That is, people are going to simplify these decisions using their prior knowledge or using some simplified rules such as frequency to make decisions. And because of that, they tend to make suboptimal decisions. They make mistakes. Here is an example of how the context might influence people's choices. On the web page, I've shown you two different subscription plans. You can subscribe to theeconomist.com at $59 a year, online access only. Or you can subscribe to print and web subscription at $125 a year. So your choices would be between these two different options. So when you look at these two different options, option 1 is cheaper. Option 2 is more expensive, but it offers a higher variety of ways to access the content. So each one would have pros and cons, and people would make the trade-off between prices and the variety to access the content. Next, let me give you a different choice set. So in this case, you have three options: economist.com, web access only, $59, print subscription, $125, print and web subscription, $125. So I have added a middle option where you get print only and the price is the same as print and web. You would think the second option is strictly inferior comparing to the third option, so it shouldn't change how people make choices. But then think again, what if this is the only choice set that you have seen? Would it make you more likely to choose the web option, or would this choice set actually make you more likely to choose the third option? So let me put these two together. So these two different choice sets have been tested in experiments on what we call a between subject experiment, that is, on different groups of people. Some people would only see the case of three options. Some people would only see the case of two options. And here are the results. In the two option case, 57% of the people chose option 1, and 43% of the people chose option 2, that is the bottom option. And in the three option case, only 28% of the people chose option 1, and 72% of the people chose option 3. The difference is striking because by adding an option that nobody has chosen, you are actually able to change the choices between web-only access and print and web access. You actually flip the popularity of the two plus more. So people are far more likely now to choose the more expensive print and web access option. So if you are running a business, this presentation of options costs almost nothing. But then if you can change the weight of people choosing the far more expensive option, imagine how much profit this small change would bring in. This phenomena is what we call a decoy effect. Let me give you a theoretical background on how this thing has happened. So in this example, we have two dimensions people are trading off. One dimension is access convenience, how convenient it is to access the content. The other dimension is affordability. This is basically a reversed scale of price. So the cheaper a product is, the more affordable it is. Now, between these two options, let me draw a straight line. Let's assume the two options, they both fall on this line. Option 1 is web only at $59. Option 2 is web and print at $125. So comparing these 2 points, the web only option is cheaper, so it's more affordable. That is why it is higher than the web and print option. And on the other dimension, access convenience, the web and print option is more convenient than the web only option, so it is towards the right of the web only option. So that's where the two existing options are. And what decoy effect does is you add a third option that is print only at $125. So in this case, the print only option is horizontal to the web and print option because it is exactly the same price. So affordability wise, it's equal. So that's why it's flat here. And on the other hand, it is less convenient to access because then it's on the left of this, not as convenient as web and print. So by adding this third option, what happens is originally people were choosing between these two options. They have to do a trade-off between affordability and convenience of access. And trade-offs are difficult for consumers. What the third option changes is it makes the trade-off much easier because now this option of web and print at 125 strictly dominates the print only at 125. So this option make this instantly a better choice than this one. So that's what we call a decoy effect. So you add a decoy, something that is kind of irrelevant. It makes one of the option by comparison look far more appealing and make that option far more likely to be chosen. Here is the decoy zone. That is, if you add any new option that it falls within this square, it would make this web and print option more appealing. For example, if you add something here that is the same as print only, but the affordability is actually lower, which means it's even more expensive than these two. In that case, it will similarly make this option appears more appealing. So this decoy effect has actually been applied in various contexts in practice. It generally works very well. I'm sure you can all come up with different applications. For example, when Apple offers multiple iPhones, they could do something like this, iPads. For a lot of electronic products where there are not many different options available, you could easily make one of the options a decoy, so to speak, and making one of the more expensive products far more appealing and sell more of those. Next, I'm going to give you a rug. This is a silk Persian rug. The regular price is $299 and the on sale price is $249. And think for yourself how appealing this deal is. And usually one group of customers would only see one kind of price drop. So now assume you have not seen the previous example. I'll give you a different one. Again, a silk Persian rug. The regular price is $599 and the sale price is $249. Think for yourself, how attractive do you think this deal is? So when I put these two options in front of you, it's kind of obvious that this is the same rug. But in a retail environment, the regular price itself generally serves as a very, very strong reference price point for the consumers. Even if consumers know that regular price is kind of fake, it is still very difficult to consider that regular price irrelevant. I can assure you that if I show different groups of customers these two different options, far more people would decide that the option on the right, the fake $599 reference price, would make the deal more appealing, therefore increase the demand for that rug. Here's our behavioral update number 2. Context or reference matters. The options available out there may influence how consumers make decisions. Next, let me give you 2 different scenarios. Scenario A, you are a purchasing agent for a large organization. You have ordered a new PC, which will cost $1,000. A friend discovers an identical PC for $600. Would you cancel your current order and switch to the other vendor? Assume cancellation and reordering will take your assistant half a day. Scenario B. You are a purchasing agent for a large organization. You have ordered a new computer network, which will cost $20,000. A friend discovers a system for $19,600. Would you cancel your current order and switch to the other vendor? Assume cancellation and reordering will take your assistant half a day. First, let's consider these 2 scenarios. What is the benefit? The benefit is actually identical. It's a saving of $400. Now, what is the cost? The cost, again, is identical. That is your assistant's half a day. Whatever salary you pay your assistant on that half a day, that's the cost. So both the benefits and the costs are identical. But for all of us, it's pretty obvious that in scenario A, you're far more likely to switch than in scenario B. That's because very often we're not making decisions based on the absolute benefits and costs. We're looking at relatives. So here is behavioral update number 3. Willingness to pay is impacted by relative incentives. In determining his or her willingness to pay, a consumer will consider both the absolute economic value, so this is what we have been focusing on so far before today's topic. They will also consider the relative transaction value. So here, the relative value would be the perceived value minus the price divided by price. That is the percentage difference. Now, we have talked about the people consider reference prices. For example, in the rug case, the regular price is the reference price. How do consumers form the reference prices then? There are generally 2 different ways. First, it's what we call internal reference prices. That is, people remember past prices, and then they use that as a reference point to decide whether the price they are currently seeing in the store is a good price or not. So in this case, there are different ways to reconcile the problem of people remembering past prices. That is, the way to deal with this is what we call partitioned pricing. That is, you keep the price more or less constant, but separate out discounts in the form of coupons, rebates, or some other special packages instead of directly discounting your price, so that the regular reference price stays constant instead of seeing sharp drops. That serves as future reference prices and making people more price sensitive. And in addition, small price increases generally are less noticeable than one large price increase. The second form of reference price is what we call external reference prices. So in this case, the reference price is often the other prices that are shown out there, or whatever price information you give to consumers to serve as a reference point. The decoy effect that we have just discussed can be deemed as an example of external reference prices. The price of the decoy serves as a reference price. And here is another example. Chevrolet used to advertise that this Chevy costs less a day than a burger, large fries, and a shake, $6.23 a day. So People use a reference point to make judgments. Next, I'm going to show you a few different scenarios. Just use your intuition to make a judgment. Mr. A was given tickets to a lottery. He won $300 in one lottery and $150 in the other. Mr. B was given a ticket to a single large lottery. He won $450. Who is happier? Well, most of us would think Mr. A is happier. And if I put this down in formula, this is what it looks like. Although 300 plus 150 equals 450, and the value of a $300 lottery win plus the value of a $150 lottery win is larger than the value of $450 lottery win. And the quick updates on this is, in practice, you should bundle gains. Here is a second pair of scenario. Who is more upset? Ms. A received a letter from her employer saying that a minor mistake on her wage form implied that she owed $750. She received a similar letter the same day saying that she owed another $250 in taxes. Next, Ms. B received a letter from her employer saying that she made a minor mistake on her wage form and owed $1,000. So $750 plus $250, that's $1,000. But in these two scenarios, who is more upset? Most of us would think Ms. A is more upset. And if we formulate this in a value formula, as we did before, this is what we have. The value of negative 750 plus the value of negative 250. So both values are negative. They are less than the value of negative 1,000. That is, these two together are even more negative than the value of losing a single $1,000. Of course, both of them are smaller than zero. They're both negative. So the quick practical takeaway is you should bundle losses because a single bigger loss is better than combined chain losses. Here's the third one. Who is more upset? Mr. A's car was damaged in a parking lot. He had to spend $1,350 to repair the damage. The same day the car was damaged, he won $150 in an office poker game. Mr. B's car was damaged in a parking lot. He had to spend $1,200 to repair the damage. So who's more upset? Again, a loss of $1,350 and a gain of $150, that's a net of $1,200 loss. And the second scenario is a $1,200 loss straight. However, most of us would think Mr. A is less upset and Mr. B is more upset. To formulate this, we have the value of a loss of $1,200 is worse than the value of a loss of $1,350 and a gain of $150. The practical takeaway is you should mix losses with silver lining. That is, when you increase prices, you may want to instantly reconcile this with the customer by offering some benefits to the customers. So next, let me summarize these three different scenarios by explaining a theory behind these formulas that we have put here. Here's our behavioral update number 4. The theory is called prospect theory, and this is the theory won the Nobel Prize in economics. So what this theory says is, number 1, people always have a reference point in decision making. That is their status quo. So on the right, you see the center point, The reference point is, let's say, a 0 point here, no losses and no gains. So that is a reference point. And in reality, a reference point can be many things. It can be, for example, the regular price. And the vertical axis represents the value. That is how consumers make judgments of gains and the losses. So when people make decisions with the reference point, they then characterize the prospective outcomes of a decision either as a net gain or a net loss. For example, a price decrease from the consumer's perspective is a gain. A price increase from the consumer's perspective is a loss. If consumers were to value gains and losses straightly based on dollar values, then we would have this straight 45-degree line. That is, the value changes linearly. The more gain you have, the more you increase in value. The more losses you have, the more you decrease in your valuation. So this is the benchmark, that is a straight line. This is what classic economic theory would predict. However, through a series of experiments, behavioral economists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky found that there are diminishing returns to both gains and losses. That is, the valuation does not go like a straight line. It bends down. So people value the initial gains a lot more than later gains. So the slope of this gain actually goes down. The first $100 is more valuable than the next $100, than the next $100. So diminishing returns to gain. And similarly, there is a diminishing return to losses. When people lose money, their value goes down, and the initial rate of going down is faster. The first loss of $1,000 is most painful, the next 1,000 less so, the next 1,000 less so. On the loss domain, there's also a curve that is bending up. So that's what they predict on these two domains. And the fourth one that is also important is people are more sensitive to losses. Comparing to winning $100, losing $100 is far more painful than the joy of winning $100. So how do we apply this theory to the previous scenario then? Let me draw the first case, and the other two you can consider the scenarios similarly. So we are going to apply the prospect theory directly to this scenario. When Mr. A wins $300 on the prospect theory curve, so the first 300 win would start from the reference point and go up 300. So that high jump in value is the gain. And when we consider the second $150, now he's going to restart. So he goes back to the reference point, and then his valuation again goes up $150. And that jump of $150 is the gain. And the total valuation gain of $300 and $50 would be these two segments added up together. Remember, the line is steep in the beginning. So the valuation jump of $300 and the valuation jump of $150, when you add them up, they would account for a higher jump than a straight valuation change from the reference point of $450. That is why we have the valuation of $300 plus the value of $150 is larger than the valuation of $450. So we can explain this kind of scenario using the prospect theory. To summarize, today we have talked about the psychological aspect of pricing. Largely, we'll consider the scenarios when consumers may tend to make suboptimal, irrational decisions. And here, the key behind such irrational consumer judgments is the relationship between involvement and rationality. When consumers put in effort to make a decision, When they punch the numbers in a calculator, they are just fine making rational decisions. It is when they run into a grocery store without calculating the numbers, that's when they start to make suboptimal decisions. The second, this you can always keep in mind that generally speaking, people are lazy. They want better results, but they also will minimize the efforts. And when they minimize the efforts without realizing the cost of minimizing such efforts, they pay because they will make wrong judgments on pricing. And the third is people make choices by context and references. Very often, we are not making decisions out of vacuum. We are making decisions based on the context. That is why we see the decoy effect. That is why we care a lot about the relative changes, not just absolute changes. Although sometimes what only matters is the absolute changes. And third, we have discussed the prospect theory. This is one of the most time-tested theories in the field. And once you learn the theory, you're going to see it happening all the time in everyday life. That's all about the psychological aspect of pricing. Thank you. I'll see you next time.